Morning, everybody. Week 18. We're talking gambling today. It's going to be an exciting show. Week 18 is crazy, though. We got to be careful because teams pulling starters. John and I were talking about that right before the show began, so we got to be careful there. But nonetheless, we are going to get ready for some gambling talk. John Ryan, 28-year pro bettor in the last 24 months, 74% against the spread on his max bets. Last 3 years, NFL, 65%. You can find him at John Ryan Sports 1. And John, also tell everybody where they can find you on the internet.
Well, at Twitter, on the Twitter feed, John Ryan Sports #1 is the best place to get me. Just send a direct message. I'll give out anybody that's listening right now. I'll give out the next 5 days free, all access. Gives you an excellent chance to test drive the service, get a firsthand look at the research that I do provide with every single pick. It's the same thing with Jim. We just don't throw darts at a board and say, okay, take Chris Kirk today. There's a lot of research behind it. And honestly, Jim and I could probably write for 6 hours, more than we already do, for these plays. And we'd never get home and our families would be upset with us. But seriously, that's the best place. And then predictiveplaybook.com is a site that I've put together a team of handicappers that are among the best in the world. So you don't go there just to buy me. You go there to buy guys like Jesse Scholl, Rocky Atkinson, and a whole bunch of others.
So that's the way to do it. Now, John and I, the way we do this show, if you're new, John will break down a game against the spread. I will go over 4 prop bets. John will give you another game against the spread, and I'll give you some DFS options for those who play daily fantasy. So, John, we start out Vikings at the Bears, and the first thing that kind of frustrates me is the Vikings and in another game, the 49ers, to me, they have a lot to play for. They're playing for the 2 seed, in my opinion. That's a big deal. But apparently, we got word out of Minnesota coaches yesterday that there's a point where they're going to pull their starters. Now, that said, the Bears are decimated. Justin Fields isn't playing. They are missing cornerbacks, 3 of their top 4 cornerbacks. Jalen Johnson, IR. Kindle Vildor, the slot corner, IR. Jalen Jones, who would have stepped up, he's out. Minnesota, they're missing their center, Garrett Bradbury, and their right tackle, Brian O'Neill. So they're missing a couple of linemen. Those are the injuries on this game. But, John, tell us what you like about this game and who you like.
Well, first of all, Jim, thanks for having me on the show, of course. And, this last game of the regular season, there's a lot of people out there think that you should just not even consider betting these games. But I have found that not only the last game of the regular season, but the first game of the regular season sometimes gives you some of the best edges of any of the weeks. So in the last game of the regular season, we're told that Justin Fields isn't playing. It looks like Chicago's throwing in the towel now before the game even kicks off, trying to get that first round draft pick, the #1 pick, if the Texans somehow find a way to win a game. But what happens is that the market overreacts. And I'm here to tell you that teams that are playing with no starters on offense alone, going up against a team that has something to play for, believe it or not, they actually hit at 60% against the spread. So with the case of another game that would apply here, Eagles and Giants, don't automatically assume that the Eagles are going to win by 50 points because the Giants just might cover that big number of 14.5. And I think here in this situation, Jim, the play is to take the Bears. I'm not saying to be real aggressive with it. You can bet 50% pre-flop and then see how the game goes. See, what happens with all the questions that Jim just mentioned and the concerns with starters coming out by Minnesota. There's a lot that can happen, and that in-game line is going to be flying all over the place. And I really can't wait for that to happen because the more volatile those numbers become up and down, the better my in-game bets become. So betting on home dogs that have had just a really bad season, they've only won 3 games. The game is taking place in the last game of the regular season. And our home dog, of course, didn't do so well in the last game and failed to cover the spread. 11-11 straight up. I mean, I can't even believe that, Jim. 11-11 for a team that's just absolutely horrid. 17-5 against the number. 77% winning bets over the last 10 seasons. And this all points to taking the Chicago Bears. And I like the strategy I outlined. Take 50% pre-flop, look to add in-game according to how the game goes.
You know, John, as always, it's a great call, and I especially like the in-game move because Minnesota may want to iron out their offense in the first quarter of the game, maybe a little longer, because last week they laid a complete egg in Green Bay. So they're going to want to get a little bit of confidence in that offense. So you could see the Vikings jump out to an early lead, and that line, as you're intimating, that line could go very big in the Bears' favor. So both calls are great, but that going post flop, that's a great idea. Now, I'm going to go through a few prop bets here. Now, I'm going to give you 4. 2 of them, we're still waiting for Vegas to put the number on these players. So I'll give you a target number because they're going to be amazing plays based on the research I've done, and I want to lay them out. And if they don't get posted, they don't get posted. First one is Rashid Shaheed of the New Orleans Saints. They haven't posted a number on him. As long as you get that number at 52 yards receiving, you go the over on that. Now, he has at least 41 yards in his last 5 games. It's a little misleading. One of those games, the only game he was below 53 yards was that extreme weather game they played 2 weeks ago. And it was sub-zero, wind chills, heavy wind. So he still had 41 yards in that game, and that spoke volumes. Anyway, aside from that weather game, in his last 3 recent games, at least 75 yards. He has been on fire. He has been not getting a ton of targets, but he's been very efficient with his targets. And with defenses worried about Chris Olave, Rashid Shaheed is still catching teams off guard. Now, they're playing Carolina. Carolina has given up a ridiculous 258 wide receiver yards per game. Again, last 4 weeks. They're allowing 17 wide receiver receptions per game during it's been most in the league, and 11 yards per target. And Rashid Shaheed has extreme speed and can get downfield. So the wheels are up completely on that one. Again, they've got to post a number. As long as you get 52 yards, or if it goes lower, which is fine, you're going to bet that. The next one, Van Jefferson, under 37.5 yards. Now, he has fewer than 45 yards in his last 8 games, and he's been under 33 yards in half of those 8 games. Now, Seattle, here's the deal, the defense. In their last 4 games, Seattle is allowing a total of 69 wide receiver yards per game. Last 4, insane. Best in the league, right? 48% catch rate. Receivers aren't even catching half of the passes thrown to them last 4 games. And how many receptions does Seattle give up to wide receivers in the last 4 games? An average of 7. There is no receiver production to be had. Seattle has to win and then hope the night game has the Lions beating the Packers, so they have full motivation here. Now, even yards per target, Van Jefferson's a downfield guy, right? The Seahawks are giving up less than 5 yards per target. Best in the league, last 4 games. And here's some recent wide receiver production against them. Garrett Wilson, 18 yards. Juju Smith-Schuster, 27. Brandon Ayuk, 19. DJ Moore, big fat 0. Van Jefferson did go over that number about 5 weeks ago, but they saw him. He won't surprise them this time. 39, he barely beat them. Even Devontae Adams, this is before they got hot, 74 yards, not a great game. So this is a wheels up. I'm betting the under on Van Jefferson. The next one, Russell Wilson's passing yardage total hasn't been posted yet. And this game is a little bit weird right now. Vegas moved the line 6 points. It was Chargers -3. Now it's Broncos -3. And I really can't understand why, because Brandon Staley came out and he said the 5th seed was a big deal because that means you avoid Cincinnati, Buffalo, and Kansas City early in the early round. You get Jacksonville or Tennessee. To me, and to Coach Staley, that was paramount. Now, the only thing I could think of is that the NFL screwed up. They should have had all the games with common interest at the same time. The Bengals and the Ravens are playing early. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to wait until the early games are done right before the 3:25, 4:25, if your Eastern games kick off. And if that point, if Cincinnati, I'm trying to think of who won this game now. If the Ravens win the game, that means that the Chargers have to win for the 5 spot. If that goes, you're betting Russell Wilson under 223 yards or if they put the number higher, obviously. Wilson hasn't hit that in 4 of his last 5 games, and he's been under 190 in 2 of those games. Now, he played this defense in week 6. He threw for 188 yards. That was all. Now, here's what's funny about that. He threw for like 170 of those in the first half. He threw for 12 in the second half and overtime. Once they figured out what Russell Wilson did, they blitzed him relentlessly. They're excellent in coverage. So anyway, the Chargers have been giving up 151 pass yards over their last 4 games. The only quarterback who's hit 250 yards since week 3 was Patrick Mahomes. And so again, make sure that you know if the Ravens win. If the Ravens lose, fade this. Last one. This is for today, Saturday, if you're watching live. Travis Etienne under 65.5 yards. Now, the issue is not Etienne. Etienne's been playing great. He has at least 83 yards in 3 straight games. So you're like, well, Jim, what the heck? Why are you going to go under on him? It's his opponent. First of all, he faced Tennessee 4 weeks ago. They held him to 32 yards. The game before that, Etienne had 54. He's in a hot streak. But here's the thing. Tennessee, even with the injuries, they're giving up 2.74 yards per carry and 66 rush yards per game over their last 4 games. And again, that's with injuries. They're getting a couple guys back today. The injuries now, they hurt their pass rush and their coverage, but not their run D. And the way to attack them, and Jacksonville knows this, you attack them through the air. That's how you beat them. You don't run on Tennessee. And listen to this last thing before I move back to John. These are the recent rush yards allowed by Tennessee. Ezekiel Elliott, 37 yards. Austin Eckler, 58. Travis Etienne, the guy we're saying here, 32. Miles Sanders, 24. Samaje Perine got 58 yards. Aaron Jones had 40. Nobody is sniffing 60 yards against his defense. So you're betting the under on Travis Etienne. All right, before we get back to John Ryan, if you're watching on YouTube, please smash the like and subscribe button. We'd appreciate that greatly. And if you love the content at RotoWire and you want 2 days free with no credit card, you just go to rotowire.com/try. Before we get back to John, we see Alex is in the house. So good morning. Good morning to you as well, Alex. John, we have a second game here. Patriots are playing the Bills. And I am very excited to hear what you have to say about this game. What a weird, crazy week. One of the happiest things that's happened was Damar Hamlin talking to his teammates. I can't tell you how ecstatic I was that the young man looks to be progressing well. He looks like he's going to beat this thing. I got goosebumps in my arms right now. I am just
I do too.
Yeah, so excited for the young man. I couldn't even do football talk the day after it happened because all I cared about was him pulling through. And then once the news got better and better, could get back to normal. It's not normal. We're worried that something would happen to anybody, but Damar Hamlin seems to be okay. Anyway, John, I had to get that off my chest. If you want to talk about that, that's fine too. Patriots, Bills, what do you like on this game?
Well, I'll tell you, I like the Bills, and I'm sorry, I like the Patriots, and the reason I like the Patriots here, they're truly in a must-win situation. But I'm going to throw a little question at you, Jim, if you don't mind. The Bills play in a rather bad weather environment, but their team is more conditioned to be like a dome team. They love to throw the ball. They like conditions that are ideal, not necessarily in Buffalo. And now the league, in the aftermath of all this stuff that happened this week, is going to have a neutral field, and the scenarios are, I'm not even going to bother trying to go through them because it would be a 2-hour show. But does it make sense that the Bills would want to play an AFC Championship game at a neutral field, say against whoever it would be, Cincinnati, whatever combination? However, does it make sense if it's the Chargers coming from Los Angeles because they have great weather? They would probably want to host that game in Buffalo, but
it would only, John, let me interrupt you. It would only be if that game was between Cincinnati, Kansas City, or Buffalo. Only the teams impacted by the 1 seed. If the team that goes plays any of these teams that weren't in contention for that 1 seed, the game would be played at the home field of the team that had the higher seed. So if it's the Chargers, the Titans, the Jaguars, or any of these bottom feeders trying to get into the playoffs, those games would all be at the home field.
Okay, I'm glad you cleared that up for me because that's what I was struggling with. I didn't realize that it was only the ones that were competing, but that sounds very fair. So then Buffalo is going to host any game that is not
with the two teams
Kansas
who are
City or
fighting for the one
Cincinnati.
seed. Exactly. The three teams that are fighting
Yep.
for the one seed, they will be the teams that would, if they play any combination of each other, it'll be a neutral site game.
Okay. So that clears up my little theory there with today's game. But nevertheless, my model is on the Patriots here. And of course, the model doesn't have any emotion to what happened earlier this week. It doesn't have any knowledge of that. It just knows that this is the last game of the regular season and it's being played in January. So this is what I call my January NFL betting system. And this applies to playoff games. So if you like it, write it down. It's easy to track. Bet on road underdogs in games played in January. Our road team is coming off a win to a division rival. That's all there is to it, folks. Simple to follow. It's gone 14-16 straight up. That doesn't sound so good, but Jim, as you know, you play the money line on these type of road dogs, your ROI goes up to 37% over the last 10 seasons. 22-6, 79% against the number. Supports the Patriots here. And the last part of this is 18-12 favoring the under at 60%, which isn't too shabby over 10 years. That makes sense to me as well. A defensive struggle. Some guy named Bill Belichick is still the coach of the Patriots, I think. And, he's going to want to get in the playoffs. So it makes sense that it would be a lower than expected scoring game. And somehow the Patriots find a way to win this game in advance. I just don't see it any other way. I almost feel guilty going against Buffalo, Jim, because of everything that happened. But as you know,
man.
you guys like you and I, we bet numbers, not teams, not mascots, and we're just going with what the numbers are telling us.
Exactly. And that's why you're a professional sports bettor. You don't have time for emotion. You only have time for what the numbers and the trends show you. And that's why you're following John Ryan at John Ryan Sports One. Now, we have Alex in the house saying he's going the under, and you seem to intimate that in the Pats Bills game too. You said it was lower scoring, John, correct?
Yep.
Yeah.
That definitely supports it.
Now, the weather is going to be fairly neutral for those teams. 29 degrees with 4-mile-per-hour winds for both New England and Buffalo, who are used to 0 this time of year, and maybe some snow. It'll actually be a nice day for both of them. So that'll be a fun game to watch for sure. But again, John is on the Patriots here. All right. And now DFS recommendations. Now, look, I'm going to tell you, very, very straightforward. DFS is very, very difficult in week 18 to play because you've got the salaries involved. You got potential players getting pulled. You have so many variables going on here. I'll give you players in good situations, but again, you have to kind of put your mind around if you feel the risk reward of players getting pulled is worth it. So the first one, I like spending down on quarterback, and I actually like spending on Andy Dalton. Andy Dalton has been bad this year, but in his home games, he has multiple touchdowns in the majority of his home games, and they're playing Carolina. Carolina, we talked earlier about Rashid Shaheed and the prop bets, how many yards they're hemorrhaging. Well, they're down both of their starting cornerbacks, and they are a mess in the secondary, and yet they're a very good run defense. So, and the Saints are down a couple of linemen. They're down Andres Pete, and they're also down. They're down their second. I can't remember the name of the second guy, but they're down their left guard and they're down their center. So that's going to be problematic. They're going to throw. And between Chris Olave, Rashid Shaheed, Andy Dalton's going to get it done here. And neither team has anything to play for, but Andy Dalton does. Andy Dalton's trying to get one more contract somewhere, so he's definitely going out there and playing. And Olave and Shaheed, they're both rookies, both still trying to prove some things. Now, in a tournament, if you want to be very risky, Jalen Hurts could be that risky pick for you. They're playing the Giants. At some point, look, they could pull Hurts at some point. They could. But there's a good chance that this offense gets rolling, and the Giants are already down a number of players. They're already not playing with Leonard Williams, Azeez Ojulari. They're already down cornerbacks as well. This defense is in disarray. And that said, I think that realistically, even if it's for a half, this offense could put up 35 points in a half, and both the running and the passing game could all go in a half. That's how much of an advantage they could have by playing. Now, the Giants could come back late, but it wouldn't even matter. they're going to have a lot of backups in this game. Now, at running back, Cam Akers is 6,200. They're playing Seattle. Seattle has been one of the rougher run defense in the league. Now, we cited the pass game statistics when we talked about the Van Jefferson prop, how they've been like impenetrable through the air, but you can run on them. And I don't know that they mind the opponent running on them because the explosive plays aren't what is going to beat them. They they're not letting you beat them through the air. So Cam Akers has been on a bender too. He's had easy opponents the last 5 weeks, but this is another easy opponent. Over 100 rushing yards the last 2 weeks, 100 scrimmage yards the last 3 weeks, finding his way in the end zone. In the same game, Ken Walker is 6,400. And ultimately, we know Pete Carroll's propensity to run the football. Aaron Donald's out. A'Shaun Robinson is out. So again, in a game in which Seattle can play with the lead, Ken Walker has been very effective the last few weeks. He's often predicated on big plays, but those will be there. Now, if you want to spend down a little bit, Zach Moss has been not an upside play yet, but he's been very efficient for the Colts. They're playing the Texans. Last game for the Texans have been very bad against the run. I don't see them saying we're going to sell out to stop Zach Moss. I do not see a world where they're going to say Zach Moss is going to beat us. I don't think that happens. He's 5,200. He's been seeing 67% of the snaps. He's seeing in the neighborhood of 20 touches a game. There's touchdown opportunity here. At receiver, we talked earlier about Rashid Shaheed. Just like in the prop, 4,200 on DraftKings. He can blow away that salary. And if you're going to take the leap with Jalen Hurts, if you're going to take the risk, there's a lot of risk there, then I would pair him this week with A.J. Brown. Devontae Smith has been playing at the better level. A.J. Brown has the higher upside. And with the Giants down 2 corners, they don't even have the configuration. I think they could double him on. So I think that he's the way to go. Now, Garrett Wilson is getting Joe Flacco. And when those two have played together early in the season, he was averaging over 10 targets a game, and he was productive even in difficult matchups. Miami, as we know, they are a mess in the secondary. Now, the Jets are down 4 linemen here, but Garrett Wilson isn't just a deep threat. He gets open a lot in the short and intermediate area. So Flacco's going to look to get the ball out, and he already has chemistry with Garrett Wilson. Wilson's 5,800, good play here. And then at tight end, you'll look on paper and you'll see that the Dalton Schultz matchup against Washington is considered great against tight ends. Look, they have a great pass rush. And even though Jonathan Allen's not playing for them, they still have an outstanding pass rush. Dallas can need to get the ball out quickly. And when they do, we already know that zone and the chemistry with Dak Prescott always finding Dalton Schultz in the soft spot in the zone. Scored 2 touchdowns last week because he knows exactly where Prescott needs him. At 4,500 against Washington, I think they're going to need him in the zone to sit down in those spots to keep the pass rush of a Prescott. And also Tyler Higbee. We faded him last week. He had a great week 2 weeks ago. He's playing Seattle, 4,400. We already said they're going to run well. Seattle shuts down wide receivers, but they don't shut down tight ends. They've been getting scorched by tight ends all year. Give the most fantasy points to tight ends. Tyler Higbee's 4,400, coming off the down week, solid play. Defensively, you want to save money, 2,400, take a flyer on the Falcons against the Bucs. I don't think the Bucs starters are long for that game. Falcons are not a good unit, but if they're playing backups at 2,400, you got a chance there. John Ryan, any words about this weekend's action? Any other games? Anything you want to highlight? You want to tell them about Predictive Playbook? Go right ahead.
Thanks, Jim. We're going to have another 5%er going. We're 40-13 over the last 3 calendar years in all sports. Had the Memphis Grizzlies the other night, who, Jim, they were up 22 points. I actually, at my age, I fell asleep at halftime.
Yes.
I woke up and I thought, whoa, they only won by 8, but the line was 6 or 6.5. So I did one of these and I was like, wow. Sometimes the horseshoe is in the right place in the house, But we'll have another one tomorrow in the NFL. And a little promotion. I use the optimization model at RotoWire.com. I think it's the best on the planet. I wouldn't use it if I didn't think so. And it's very easy to use. You simply take what I would recommend, take Jim's picks here and give it a like on the model. And then the model will know to include them. You can play different variations. You don't have to take all the players, but just take, the ones that you really like that Jim has mentioned. And that's what I do. And I'm telling you, I've cashed in all but 1 week tweaking what I come up with his expertise, and it's worked out really, really well. And I think you'll have a lot of fun doing it. It's fun. If you're a creative type of person, doing these lineups with optimization models is right up your alley.
And if you want to check that out for free with no credit card, go to rotowire.com/try. That's the way to see what we have to do at RotoWire. As for me, today, Saturday, if you're watching live, from 1 to 3 Eastern, I'll be on Sirius XM Fantasy Channel 87. Tomorrow morning, 9 to 10 Eastern. If you want to interact with me about anything NFL, look, a lot of people don't play fantasy in Week 18. If you have questions about the games, if you have questions about the players, the playoffs, I'm on the live stream, the RotoWire live stream. Now that is pinned to my Twitter at Jim Coventry NFL. Go ahead and find that. You can join me on the live stream. That's on right on this platform that you're watching right now. You can catch us there. That'll be from 11 a.m. until whenever we finish before kickoff tomorrow. That's it, John. Before we get out, I see Alex says he has a nice 1 to 23 to under trend on this Ravens Bengals game. Also, do you know? I don't really get that. Maybe you help out with that.
Yeah, what he's saying there, Alex is actually was one of my first followers. Now it's hard to believe I'm at 11,000 people, but humbly said. But Alex was I think one of the first 200 back in the days where you got to 300 and was like, whoa. But Alex has been one of my main guys. So he's saying 23-1 is the under record and in this particular Ravens Bengals thing that he has. And I don't know if he's still out there or not. But I can ask him afterwards what the specific criteria is for this 23-1 and have him posted on the Twitter feed for the show so everybody knows what it means. But it would favor a bet on the under.
Nice. And last thing, if you want to see my prop suggestions from today's show, they're on my Twitter feed at Jim Coventry NFL. Just look back a day or two. There aren't too many things. You can find them right there. Outside of that, John, give your closing line. I love that. Always give that, and then I'll close up then.
Yeah, I like it. Always remember the most important thing, folks, weekend, whether it's Monday through Friday or the weekend, bet with your heads not over it. And if you do that, may all the wins be yours.
And Alex tells us a 24-game sample and 23 have gone under. So that is a very nice trend for those listening on the under on the Ravens-Bengals game. All right, for John Ryan, you find him at John Ryan Sports 1. For myself, at Jim Coventry NFL. Good luck in Week 18, and we'll talk to everyone soon. Have a wonderful day and Happy New Year.